Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's pay homage to our teacher, Pinot Lokusami Mahase. May he have long life and good health, and may he too realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya. Dear Dhamma friends, today we're about to listen to a sermon. And the reason why we're listening to a Dhamma sermon today is because we want to remember a departed relative of ours, a departed friend, Nilanti Gunasekara Mahatmya. And so this madam passed away 3 months ago. So we especially want to dedicate this sermon to Mrs. Nilanti Gunasekara. And so today, what we really want to do is, we'd like to discuss exactly what the Buddha taught. And with that, what we can do is, with all the merit we gain from doing this, we want to share all that merit with Mrs. Nilanti Gunasekara. Okay? So today, let's learn a little bit about the Buddha's teachings. And today's topic, let's discuss about the mind. Because you, me, all of us, we all have a mind. And we all have a mind that runs around everywhere. We have a mind that doesn't have a body, but goes so far and wide. Maybe those families and friends who lost that relative, Nilanti Gunasekara, maybe they might be going through a rough time right now. But don't forget, if you keep your mind in check, you can get through even the toughest of times. One day, there was a monk in the Buddha's time. His name was Malankuputta. He was really old. This venerable Malankuputta, though he was old, he came to the Buddha and he asked Supreme Buddha, can you give me some advice? I need some advice right now. If you give me some Dhamma advice right now, I will go alone and I will practice exactly what you tell me. So the Buddha said, Malankuputta, come on now. You're asking me for brief advice. You're asking from me some sort of short advice. But you're so old. If I'm supposed to give you a brief advice, what am I supposed to tell to the young ones? So the Buddha's saying here, what he's saying here is, Malankuputta, you're too old. You're too old and weak. What are you going to do with some brief advice? You can't do anything anymore now. You're too old. So then Malankuputta replied, no, Swamini. Please, oh Blessed One, give me some sort of advice so that I can go and live off alone and practice meditation and reflect on what you said. So that way I can achieve Nibbana. What is he asking here? He wants to strive. He wants to give up his life for the sake of the piece of advice the Buddha is about to give him. So then the Buddha, here it goes. The Buddha is now, he's going to give us a beautiful sermon. The Buddha asks, Malankuputta, have you ever seen, now this is something really relevant to us, the Buddha asks, have you ever seen something in your life in the past where there's something, have you had any desire, he asks, or any lust or affection for anything you've ever, for any form that you can see with your eyes, but that you've never seen before. So what the Buddha asks here, have you ever desired for something you've never seen before? Have you ever desired for something you've never seen before? Malankuputta says, no. Have you ever desired for something you've never heard before? Let's say you've never heard a song from a certain artist. Let's say you've never heard Justin Bieber's song before. Would you desire to listen to such a song? No. Why? Because we've never heard it before. The same thing goes for a smell or a taste. Let's say you've never tasted Korean food before. Are you going to desire Korean food? No, right? Because you've never tasted it before. If no one ever told you about Korean food, you wouldn't think about eating it. If you've never heard about Korean food, if you've never eaten it before, would you ever desire it? No. The same thing goes for touch. And so the Buddha says, whenever you see, hear, or sensed or cognized by you, whatever you've seen before, or thought before, or smelt before, whatever the case is, whatever there is, just think of it as a form and nothing more than that. So when we hear things, we give so much power, so much importance to the things we see, to the things we hear. When we see a beautiful person for the very first time, we get our mind starts fantasizing so much. We get so enveloped by it. We let those forms, those things we see, get the better of us. We let the music we hear get the better of us. We let the smells we smell take control over us. But what the Buddha is saying here is, whatever you see, just think of it as a sight and nothing else. Whatever you hear, just think of it, it's just a sound and nothing else. So when you treat the things you see, hear, smell, when you interact with things in this way, then Malankiputta, in that way, you're not here, you're not there, you're not in between, you're free. So what does that mean? You're not here, you're not there, you're not in between, you're free. So you might have heard there used to be a person in the past, in the Buddhist time. His name was Bahya Daruchiri. And he was a rich and famous person. And then one time he went overseas, and then his boat got destroyed by a storm. And he got casted away. He got lost in an island. And then this Bahya Daruchiri, what he did was he wore bark because he had no more clothes. He had to wear something. So he started to wear bark, and that's why they call him Bahya, is his name. Daruchiri, the one who wears bark and moss. So what he did was he wore those things and went to the city. So this is a different story now, just wanted to change topics. And then this Bahya Daruchiri, where while he was wearing this bark and this moss, he went into the town and people thought, wow, this person looks so weird. But then some people thought, you know what? This might be an arahant. This might be a liberated person. Why? Because he's wearing such weird clothing. He might be a special person. So then people started to tell that he was an arahant, and they started worshipping. And he started to think himself, you know what? I just might be an arahant. So then what happened was, Bahya Daruchiri believed he was an arahant and went everywhere and started preaching to others. But then his relative, who was a being, an invisible being in heaven, came down and wanted to see where he was. It might have been a relative or a friend. And so then he came and saw, wow, Bahya Daruchiri, my former friend, he's completely misguided. He's tricked himself into thinking that he's an arahant. And so he went to him and said, hey, you're not an arahant, but there is a real arahant, and he lives in Savatthi. He's called the Buddha. And so then Bahya Daruchiri thought to himself, you know what, what's the point of me living a life like this? I'm going to go find out who the Buddha is. And he walked. He was living in current Mumbai, right? And so the Buddha lived in Savatthi, which is hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. So he traveled by foot, non-stop, all the way to see the Buddha. And then when he went to see the Buddha, he went left, right. He was so frantic. He wanted to find the Buddha. He trekked so far, he traveled so far to see the Buddha. And then finally he saw the Buddha. He was walking on Pindapata. He was looking for food. And then he went to the Buddha and he asked for advice. The Buddha said, I'm not going to give you advice right now. I'm on alms round. I'm on Pindapata. This is my time for looking for food. A second and third time he begged, please give me some advice. Then he gave an advice, Daruchirya. What you need to do is you need to, whenever you see something, treat it just as a sight and nothing more than that. Okay? When you hear things, just treat it as just a sound and nothing else. Okay? Whenever you smell things, just think of it. That's just a scent and nothing further than that. And the same thing goes for the other things. When you do that, you're not attached to those things. And you're not here, you're not there, you're not in between. You're free. Nidhas, you're free. So then, at that point, Bahya Daruchi, he completely realized what the Buddha said. And he became an arahant. And then at that time, the Buddha told him to go get robes. And so when he was looking for robes, a cow that was nearby, a bull, struck him with his horns, and Bahya Daruchi passed away. So that same advice the Buddha gives to Malankiputta. The Buddha says, the same advice. You're not here, you're not there, you're not in between, you're free. Meaning, you're a person who is not attached to anything, and you're free. Free meaning you become an arahant when you're not attached to the things you hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. So now the Malankiputta gives a reply. Malankiputta says, I understand in detail, Swami. I understand in detail. I know exactly what you're saying. So the Buddha is saying, okay, well, what did you understand with my advice? I told you. So what did the Buddha say now? The Buddha said, whenever you see something, okay? Let's say there's something we've craved for. But if you haven't seen it before, would you crave for it? No. If you've never heard of a Justin Bieber song before, would you think about hearing it? No. If there's any type of famous scent or a perfume, would you think about smelling it? No. So unless you heard about it, or unless you've done it before, you wouldn't think about doing it. So the Buddha here is explaining about the nature of desire. So here, Malankiputta says, I know exactly what you're saying. And how do you understand it, says the Buddha? Malankiputta says it in these beautiful verses. Malankiputta says in these beautiful verses, okay? You can listen carefully. And this is how he explains. Rupang disva sati mutta piyanimittang manasi karotu sarat chitto viditi tancha ajhosaya tithati. The monk Malankiputta says, having seen something with muddled mindfulness, Rupang disva satimutta, when you see something with no mindfulness, Piyanimitta manasikaroto, when you see it and you take grasp, when you grab hold of all the good things, that is the pleasing features about the things you see, sarata chitto vedeti, you start to experience the things you see with an infatuated mind. Tancha ajho sayatiti, what happens is your mind becomes established in what you see. So let's break down what we heard. Having seen a form with muddled mindfulness, which means when, let's say, we're going on the internet and we're searching, scrolling through Instagram. Normally we see those things without mindfulness. We see so many photos with a muddled mindfulness. And what we do is, when you see the photos, do you stare at the things that you don't like to see? No, you stare at the things you like to see. Piyanimitta manasikarota. You see the pleasant features, the good signs of photos. Sarata chitto vediti. What happens is your mind gets developed. It establishes into those photos. So now you're thinking about those photos. Now you're imagining things. You're imagining about the past, about the future. Why? Because of muddled mindfulness. And then the Buddha says what happens is we grab onto it. And our mind is very infatuated at this point. The next verse, Malunkyaputta Sansi says, Tasavadanti vedana aneka rupa sambhava abhijja cha vihesa cha chitta masu pahanyati evaṁ acinato dukkhaṁ ara nibbanaṁ uchati. Again, Malunkyaputta says, now we're established on what we saw, right? Now our mind's thinking about what the things we saw. Now all these feelings, aneka rupa sambhava, many feelings are flourishing within us now. Why? Based on the things we saw. Abhijja cha vihesa cha. Now we have extreme greed for the things we see. And because of that, our mind becomes very stressed out. Okay? It gets annoyed, stressed out, gets weakened. And then this mind becomes very disturbed. For one who acts in this way, how? By experiencing the things we see with muddled mindfulness, we accumulate suffering and we get far, far away from Nibbana. So did you understand that? This is an example. This is why all of us feel so stressed out. Why we feel so much anxiety and suffering. Because all this time we thought, if we go on social media, if we do whatever that pleases us, any type of instant gratification, temporary satisfaction, whatever they may be, we assumed all this time it will gratify us, it will please us. But here it says something else. What does it say? When we see things with a muddled mind, when we hear things with a muddled mindfulness, when we smell things with muddled mindfulness, all we do is we only take the good signs. We only take the good things we like and we forget about the bad sides. So if we see a good picture, we only see the good signs about it. We don't think about the bad signs. And we experience it with an infatuated mind. Now our mind is craving it so much. Our mind is so excited. And then we grab hold really tight on the things we like. But is there anything really there in a photo? Is there anything tangible in a video? In a film? We all know it's just actors, right? So now you understand that we trick our own selves. We are the ones who create our own suffering. Then what happens? When we grab hold onto these things, we get all these different types of feelings just because of a form. And then we get this, we call abhijja, which means dedi lobhe. Extreme amount of greed overcomes us. And not just that, vihesacha. We get very stressed out. We get very tired. Is that not the case when you watch movies for a long time? Or when you flip Instagram for a long time? Or when you think of the things that you desire for a long time, what happens is your mind gets very greedy, but at the same time, very tired. So in this way, the mind becomes very disturbed. And when you live in such a way, what happens is we get far, far away from Nibbana. We're accumulating suffering. We're creating habits for ourselves that pulls us away from Nibbana. Why? Because Nibbana is a place that is free from attachment. And what we're doing is we're attaching ourselves to more and more things. So the same thing Malunkyaputta goes to say, when we hear things, smell things, taste things, or when we touch things, or when we think things, don't we spend hours and hours thinking about things, thinking about the future, or dreaming about the future? Or sometimes we relive the past. We relive high school. We relive our job, the time when we had our first job. We relive past experiences. And then we create things in our mind. Does that not happen to you? When that happens, what happens? Our mind gets a lot of lust, lots of desire. And because of that, we only we take the good sides, the things that we like the most. Let's say if we like beautiful nails, we like beautiful nails. Beautiful hair, we think about beautiful hair. We don't think about its reality, we just take the pleasing signs. And because of that, our mind gets infatuated. It gets out of control and it starts grabbing hold of the things that we attach ourselves to. What happens is many feelings start coming within us we can't explain. And then why is this happening? Because of the things we see. And because of that, abhijja, extreme greed, takes control of us and our mind becomes stressed out and tired. It gets worrisome. It gets troubled. Why? Because we're searching for something. We're trying to grasp on something that won't satisfy us. When we see, let's say, we're on TV, we're watching TV, and we see a commercial of a sandwich, but we imagine that sandwich to give us more pleasure than what it really will do to us. Instant gratification means it's something instant, temporary, for just a few moments, but we wish in our minds that it will please us forever. In our minds, we assume, we imagine that the things that will give us pleasure will solve all our problems forever. Meaning anything in the future, let's say once we graduate, all our problems will be solved. Once we find a good job, all our problems will be solved. Once I get this burger, all my problems will be solved. Once I get the right living partner, that's when all my problems will be solved. But it just turns out that never happens. Why? Because we're imagining things. Why? Because we are. What's the first sentence here? We are experiencing things with muddled mindfulness, not with real mindfulness. So we need to experience things with real mindfulness, not just taking the pleasant signs, but seeing things for what they really are. Our mother, our father, or maybe our wife or husband, whoever it is, or maybe the times when we eat food, when we listen to music, whatever the case is, it is not always going to be pleasing to us, and that's okay. What is mindfulness? When we experience all these different types of things, it won't always be pleasing to us, and that's okay. Some people come to the monastery. Some people come to the asapua, to a monastery, and they assume if they come to the programs all the time, and if they listen to monks all the time, their problems will go away. And that's not true. All of our problems won't go away all at once. Why? Because the Buddha explained, any being who's born in this world, there are these 8 worldly conditions. Sepaduk. Anybody who's born, they will be happy and they will suffer. Labha, alabha, sometimes you will gain and sometimes you will lose. So just because you're a Buddhist doesn't mean you won't lose. You will have to lose sometimes. Ninda prasansa, sometimes you will get blamed, sometimes you will get praise. So all this time we just assumed, we wished that if we become Buddhist, if we practice the Dhamma, all our problems will go away. And that's not true. What we need to understand though is how to face our such problems rather than run away from them, rather than cover them, rather than put a plaster, a band-aid over our wounds, right? What we need to do is to apply medicine instead. And how is that? We need to experience reality for what it really is. So instead of imagining different types of things from our life or from the people around us, we should start to see reality. What's the reality? The reality is that things are changing. Things are changing. We're getting old. We gotta let things go. So what you need to do is, you need to let things go. Let things go and not expect a lot from certain things. So here the Buddhist Malunkyaputta says, when someone is mindful when they see things or hear things, smell, taste, touch, whatever it is, when they are mindful, when they see a form, when they feel something, when they undergo feelings after seeing something, they don't suffer anymore. Why? When one is mindful, when they see a form, they don't let lust overcome them. They don't let desire overcome their minds. And when they experience something, they are not experiencing with an uncontrolled mind, they are controlled. Meaning they know this is impermanent. This is going to change. There's nothing for me to be too excited about. It's okay. And what happens is they're dispassionate. They don't attach themselves to it. And they don't hold tightly to it. And in this way, whenever they see forms like this, suffering is exhausted. Suffering is disappearing from their lives. It goes away. And what happens is, the Buddha explains, when you experience things in this way, in a detached manner, Nibbana is said to be close by. So if we attach ourselves to things, we will get far away from Nibbana. If we detach ourselves from things, we will get closer to Nibbana. So then Malunkyaputta says, this is how I understood the Buddha's statement. And so the Buddha said, sadhu, sadhu. That's exactly what I was trying to say. So do you remember how this whole story went? The Buddha explained in the beginning. Whenever you desired for something before, was it something you saw or something you haven't seen before? Generally, it's something we've seen. The same thing goes for whenever we desire for something to hear, it's something we've heard before, something we smelt before. So in other words, if there was something we've never seen before, we never heard before, we wouldn't desire for it all at once. In the same way, whenever we see something or hear something, we shouldn't get overly attached to those things. Just like the first time when we experienced something, we didn't know that it would give us such and such pleasure. It's only after experiencing it that we wish for it again and again and again. So here, Malunkyaputta, the Venerable Malunkyaputta, he got up and he went alone. And he just thought about what he learned today. What did he learn? He realized that whenever he sees something, hears something, he shouldn't get attached. He shouldn't attend to the pleasing signs. He shouldn't experience things with an uncontrolled mind, infatuated mind. He experiences these things with a controlled mind, without grabbing hold of them. And when he does that, that's when he can be happy. So he goes away, and what he does is he practices impermanent meditation, what we call vipassana. He develops insight meditation. And then when he was alone, he eventually became an arahant. Okay? So in this way, we learned from this story that Malunkyaputta was a very old monk. The Buddha challenged him. And he came through. He came through by understanding what the Buddha taught. So now we understood, the moral of the story was to have a controlled mind. Not to grab hold of things, but to let go of things. So let's say we assumed all this time, let's say you have a wife or a husband. We assume that we should be attached. Some people ask us, does love mean attachment? Does loving kindness mean attachment? Let's say a mother wants to go overseas to see her parents. But there are some husbands who say, no, you can't go anywhere. You have to stay nearby me. Is that love or is that attachment? See, there's some people where if they leave their life for a few moments, they can't imagine being separated for a few moments. So that's attachment. But loving kindness is, if you have true loving kindness for someone else, It doesn't matter if they go far and wide. It doesn't matter. As long as they're happy, we're happy. That's called loving kindness. So here we can understand that attachment is one thing. Attachment gives us suffering, where loving kindness is something else. The Buddha had loving kindness. The Buddha didn't have attachment. The Buddha wasn't attached to the monks. The Buddha had loving kindness for the monks. The Buddha wasn't attached to disciples. He wasn't attached to Sri Lanka, to India. He wasn't attached. He wasn't attached to humans. He taught the Dhamma to them, not out of attachment, but out of loving kindness. So what we need is loving kindness, not attachment. So now I'll explain a verse from the Theravada, okay? This is a verse from Arahant Hatta Roha Buddha. Listen carefully. Previously, my mind wandered where it wished, where it liked, as it pleased. But now, having warned the mind with developed wisdom, I have control over it as a hook holder controls an angry elephant. So this is a verse from Arahant Hatta Roha Buddha. So what does he say here? My mind used to wander everywhere. It used to pull me in all directions. But now I have controlled my mind as an elephant trainer trains an elephant with a hook holder. Have you seen an elephant trainer? An elephant trainer is pretty small, right? An elephant is really huge. But he uses just a long hook. And using that, the elephant gets tamed. In the same way, this Arahant says he controls his mind the same way. So all this, what we do, we have the similar experience, right? Our mind wanders everywhere. Sometimes we can't sleep. We get so much suffering. Why? Because we keep thinking about things. We keep imagining things. And we still imagine further and further, thinking it'll please us, but it doesn't. It just brings us more pain. So here the Arahant says, now he's controlled his mind. He doesn't let it wander wherever it likes, but rather he controls his own mind. So here we can see a controlled mind is what brings happiness. In another Dhammapada verse, the Buddha explains very beautifully. You can listen very carefully, okay? Dunni gahassa lahuno yatta kamani patino chittassa dhammato sadhu chittan dantang sukhavahang. The Buddha explains the mind is very subtle. It runs everywhere, it controls, it grabs whatever it likes. Good would it be to control such a mind. A controlled mind is what brings happiness. So all this time we thought if we let our minds run free, it'll bring us happiness. What does the Buddha explain? A controlled mind brings us happiness. What brings a controlled mind? What does it bring us? Happiness. What does a restrained mind bring us? Happiness. Not when it's out of control, but when it's in our control. So what is the secret to happiness? Having a controlled mind. Here in another Dhammapada verse, the Buddha explains, Sinche bhikkhu imang navang siddhati lahumesati Chetvara gancha dosancha tato nibbana mihisi. The Buddha explains, Sinche bhikkhu imang navang. This life is like a boat. O monks, don't fill this boat with water. Life is like a boat. Don't fill it with water. Empty the boat from water. What is that water? Siddhati lahumesati. This water is in thoughts. Our mind is filled with inferior thoughts. Empty the boat of inferior thoughts. So the Buddha says what? Empty the boat. Empty the boat means stop thinking so much. Stop thinking of inferior things. Empty your mind of inferior thoughts. Let go of those inferior thoughts. When you do that, when you empty the boat, what happens when the boat is empty with water? It will sail lightly. You can go wherever you want. Chetva ragancha dosancha. Cut off rage, lust, and hatred. Cut those away. You don't need those things. Tato nibbana mehisi. In the same way, when you get rid of those things, you can go straight to nibbana, straight to liberation. So the Buddha explains here in this Dhammapada too, that we have no time to waste thinking about all these types of things, wishing about the future, thinking about the past, reliving the past. Sometimes we relive the past where we had so many experiences with different types of people. Let them go. There's no point. And what the Buddha encourages us instead is to think about reality. Don't waste too much time thinking about those things. So the moral of the story today, we learned about the Malukiputta Sutta. We learned about several gathas and verses. What do they all say? Let go of the things that hurt our mind. Let go of the things that trouble us. There's no point in thinking about things like that. Live with the mind detached. If you gain stuff, that's fine. If people praise you, that's fine. If people blame you, that's still fine. Don't get overjoyed when people praise you. And don't get too sad when people blame you. That's just life. Okay? Don't put too much expectations on yourself. And don't wish for things too much. However things go, just keep going with it. Don't attach to yourselves. Don't make too many unrealistic goals. Take things step by step. And don't ever judge yourself. Don't measure your achievements. However things go, just be happy with how it is. The important thing is being happy when you do good deeds. Whatever you can, if you want to practice giving, give in a way that you can and just be happy. If there are times where you want to protect your virtue, your precepts, you do it in the best of your ability and be happy that you did it. And the same thing goes for if you want to meditate, do it to your best of your ability and be happy with whatever you can. Because you see, we can't do everything. We can only do however much we can. So in the same way today, today we learned a beautiful sermon from the Buddha, and we'd like to think about the Upasika who passed away, Nilanti Gunasekara. And so today, her family, the passed away, departed relative, Nilanti Gunasekara, her family must be thinking about her a lot. And so we should always be thinking about the good things she did. And we should definitely think about what we learned today and practice it in her name. So that way, today's sermon will be really special for you as a family and for Mrs. Nilanti Gunasekara as well. So today, we collected a vast amount of merit. Let's share all this merit towards all the devas. Let's share all this merit towards all the heavenly beings. By the power of this merit, may King Sakka and the four great kings, and also Gatikara Brahmaraja, and also Sahampati Brahmaraja, and all the Brahmas, and also to all the Nagas. Let's share all this merit with all of them. By the power of this merit, may they have divine long life, health, beauty, and strength. By the power of this merit, may they too realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards all the departed relatives of Lakshman Gunasekar Mahata, and let's share all this merit with all the departed relatives of his children and his grandchildren. Let's share all this merit to all the departed relatives from the beginning, from throughout samsara, and may all those departed relatives have good food, water, shelter, happiness. May they always have the association of noble friends. May they always have comfort. By the power of this merit, may all departed friends, teachers, relatives, mother, grandparents, etc., may they all escape this long journey of samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards our teacher, Pinut Lokuswami Mahatse, and all the monks and nuns practicing this Dhamma. By the power of this merit, may they have long life, good health, and strength. May they too continuously practice the Dhamma and also propagate the Dhamma. By the power of this merit, may all the monks and nuns realize the Four Noble Truths, escape this long journey of samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards Pinvat Lakshman Gunasekara Mahatma and to his children as well as to his grandchildren. And let's share merits towards Lakshman Gunasekara Mahatma's children, his parents, his family, his teachers, anybody who lives with him. And let's share merits with the whole family. By the power of this merit, may they have long life, good health, beauty, and strength. May the children have good education and successful jobs and a future. And also by the power of this merit, may they all escape this long journey of samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards to all those who help towards making this come true, to making this production, especially towards all those who work in Shraddha, Shraddha TV, especially to all those young children who work hard to make this happen, to all the people, to all the production, and especially towards the executives who make sure that the Shraddha TV works smoothly and carefully. We'd like to make sure to share merits towards all of them. By the power of this merit, may they too have long life, good health, strength, and happiness. By the power of this merit, may they too realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards the monthly donors who support Shraddha TV. Let's not forget them as well. All those donors who help for the production, for all of this to make it happen. Let's share merit with all of them by the power of this merit. May they too have long life, good health, beauty, strength, and happiness. By the power of this merit, may all the donors who help with this production realize the Four Noble Truths, escape this long journey of samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And let's share merits with all of those who joined us today, all the viewers. May the power of this merit bring you long life, health, beauty, and strength. And may you all realize the Four Noble Truths, escape this long journey of samsara in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.
මෙවැනි වටිනා ධර්මදේශනා ශ්‍රවණය කිරීමට ශ්‍රද්ධා ඩේලි YouTube චැනලය සබස්ක්‍රයිබ් කරන්න.